Hi, everyone. Now, with incredible tailored products and expertise to harness the power of the sun, this company is not just lighting up streets, but also the future of sustainable energy and night lighting. Let me introduce Green Frog Systems. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Builder Nation. I'm your host, Sam, and today we are joined by David Wilson, CTO and founder at Green Frog Systems, previously CEO, so he knows what he's doing over here. Welcome, David. Thank you very much for joining us today. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, firstly, Sam, thank you for having us on your amazing podcast. Like I said, David Wilson, you can tell from the accent, I'm Australian. Started Green Frog about 13 years ago. Background is quite a bit of manufacturing, defense type work in my past. And then 13 years ago, we started Green Frog Systems.
Right. And I want to definitely delve right into it because I have to say, before I sort of started researching about Green Frog Systems and your company and your tech, I believe that the idea or the concept of solar powered lighting for the street or everything has been pretty general, I believe, over the last years. So, with knowing this, could you please give us an overview of what Green Frog does, and more importantly, how are you really leading the charge on something completely different for these street lighting with solar power, solar panels, and the whole customization thing?
Well, I guess first of all, there's a lot of confusion with solar power in general, and the way people's perception of solar power, and especially solar street lighting or solar lighting in general. It's a bit like I liken it to the analogy of the electric car. If you'd have bought an electric car 20 years ago, you probably didn't have a great experience, or you were charging it every 20 miles.
Right.
And back then, it was very similar with solar lighting. And nowadays, the technology has evolved to the point where correctly specified and correctly manufactured, it offers a more reliable system than grid powered and still meets all the relevant regulatory requirements. And Green Frogs started 13 years ago, already ahead of the curve with a lot of technology, and we've just pretty much evolved to being pretty much the front runner worldwide in this space.
Yeah, I definitely do agree that you have been a front runner. We're going to touch that in a minute or two, but before that, I wanted to sort of go back to the beginning of the company, right? When you decided to start this for the first time, what inspired the inception of Green Frog Systems? Why did you choose to begin in this specific industry, specifically, coming from manufacturing for defense, as you mentioned, right? It's quite a change.
Well, yeah. So I think one of the things that I've in my past, I was pretty good at fault finding pretty complicated systems, and I remember as a bit of a side hobby, I was fixing one of these 20-year-old solar lights that I was telling you about, and I think I'm a pretty good with tech, and I remember looking at this thing, and it was so complicated. And it had solar panels, and it had a battery, and it had an inverter to step it up to grid power, and a light, and timers and dials and PCBs, and it was just like, wow. And I remember looking at this thing in the middle of the Australian outback, going, "There's got to be a better way." And being a licensed contractor, I was actually able to touch this thing because it was grid powered. But I'm going, we're in the middle of nowhere here. I'm going to have to send a specialized tech or engineer out here to actually fix this. This is crazy. So that's pretty much where the idea for Green Frog started, in a small little garage in Adelaide, Australia. Again, you hear the accent, and I think quite quickly one of our passions was to build products that could be installed by absolutely anyone without needing a degree or a contractor's license. And I remember I remember to this day, we sold some of our heavy duty products more for the environmental reasons into the middle of the outback on an indigenous tribe in a community centre. And I can remember to this day being on site, and one of the women in the community came up and she said, "I love your lights. We put them in ourselves, and we got a sense of ownership from that. And this light gives us safety. It just makes us feel safe when we gather around it during the day. And all the things that, Sam, you and I take for granted, having power wherever we want it,
Right.
so many people don't. And I think that really gave us the inspiration in the early days to, keep going and keep with that philosophy that we've always had, making it easy for anybody to install, but also extra low voltage. So all of our systems are not going to hurt anybody. And I think that was really where we found it. And then along the journey, we listened to the market, we designed more products, grew out of my garage, and now we've got a whole R&D team between here in the US and in Australia, and we're selling all over the world. And yeah, kind of got to pinch yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does seem like it was sort of the response to a need, as the way you describe it, right? Which is pretty cool. In fact, I mean, I want to ask. I might be spoiling ahead when we speak about the type of solutions you do, but was this sort of the inception, or maybe the first sort of scenario for your shelter lighting, or your retired lighting for these locations?
Well, absolutely. I think because especially in the remote areas of the US and even the world, bus stops are one of those. It's a gathering point, and a lot of people are traveling in the dark, and a lot of these remote areas are subject to heavy vandalism. And it's such a funny story, but we designed our first product and it lasted a week, and then went back. Generation 2 lasted 2 weeks, and and it was actually kind of cool to have to deal with very real world scenarios. And so the shelter light evolved, and there's a really amazing video on our website of one of our staff getting what I call overly eager, and and trying to break what is quite a robust product. And the shelter light was really formed to create that sense of security in an area where it's in some areas where people like to break, destroy, or vandalize. And
Right.
I think the shelter light incorporates some pretty amazing technology in not only the solar panel. We run a highly specialized toughened glass solar panel, and you can throw bricks at it, won't break it. But not only that, the unit, baseball bats and setting fire to it, it'll work. And that's been really popular for remote communities. And again, don't need to send a super highly qualified technician out to install them. So it's been a great product, and probably one of the funnest products we make.
It has been a really cool product. I have actually been, just exploring a little bit your website and a little bit of the use cases for the shelter lighting. It's actually pretty cool. But now I actually wanna discuss pretty much just a couple of things that you mentioned during this very, very interesting answer. And the first one being the R&D side, right? So you already mentioned that you grew from just this very small company, that you were just doing some solutions back in Australia for some of the places where you saw light was needed, pretty much, up to now where you have manufacturing in the US, in Australia, you're everywhere, right? How did that first sort of R&D team sort of came to assemble itself to really start developing these incredibly, I want to say like out of line lights, right? Because they're pretty unique in many senses. So how did that come to happen?
I think I think in the early days, when it was just me in a garage, and
Mhm.
because I had a pretty decent sort of defense background, and I was a manufacturing manager for a while, um,
Mhm.
I kind of had a really good understanding of what we would call ruggedization,
Mm.
and so it's any good company does iterative development,
Okay.
um, and we're quite used to that terminology in the software world, but I think we uh, we sort of brought iterative development in R&D in a product sense as well. So
Mhm.
we would put a product out to market. In the early days, I had some amazing early adopters of the technology in municipalities, and I would basically give them a bunch of lights, and then I would just monitor and pull them down, replace them. And I think over that journey, um, I can remember one of the products behind me here, the Stealth,
Mhm.
and it's got marine grade paint, but in the early days, customers were putting these on the beach, and 12 months later, there's no paint on them, and
Right.
it's just like, oh man, how do you? So this iterative development, you know, 5, 10 years of changes, and so when all this development needed to happen, not just on paint but housings to electronics, I had to start assembling team people that were way better than me and way more
Mm.
specialized in certain areas. And um, you know, the engineering and the electronics and mechanical engineering team we have now is kind of evolved due to customers wanting to put our products in some pretty crazy areas. So and expanding that team here into the US for US based scenarios,
Mhm.
and even into Europe. We do a lot um, into the UK and Spain as well, and all of those environments create a specific set of R&D needs.
Mhm. Right. Now that is something that I wanted to ask you precisely, specifically about this. You already mentioned the manufacturing team that you currently have in the
Mm,
U.S. versus in versus in Australia.
mm,
I kind of imagine that there has to be some big differences, maybe, or maybe not so big, but differences in the manufacturing process, or maybe in the requirements that
mm,
the devices that you have to do for Australia versus for the US versus maybe the rest of the world. Like, I understand that electronics specifically, and even more
mm,
so solar panels, tend to
mm,
have different regulations depending on
mm,
where they are. So how did you address all of these different regulations?
mm. Well, I think one of the main thing is, firstly, uh, sort of being in control of our own destiny. We make all of our own solar panels, so
Mm-hmm.
we'll bring in best of breed solar cells. A lot of them are from the US here, manufacture them, and we sort of ship them all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're tailor made specific to us in the way that they work, which brings in a huge amount of efficiency. For example, the solar panels that you put on your roof are designed for mass market.
Mm-hmm.
They're whereas the requirements for high-end solar lighting, we have to configure the cells differently. In some cases, use slightly different cell technology,
Mm-hmm.
um, to be able to get the most out of it. Some cells work better in low light conditions. So we've got one of our products. It's one of the top selling solar lights in the UK for very low light, rainfall, poor weather conditions. And then we have some that operate in extreme temperatures, Death Valley and
Oh,
central Australia, where
right.
temperatures can get, up over the 140 degree mark.
Wow.
So there's a lot of work there. One of the biggest things we do is the controller, which we'll get into a little bit later, has some pretty sophisticated algorithms to work out how it's going to be stay on all night, maintaining the
Mm-hmm.
lighting levels. In the US, there is the lighting levels that are required for compliance. So for
Mm.
pathways and roadways are a lot brighter than some parts of the world. and that's kind of where the American made systems are, upgraded to be able to deliver more light, but still give us that autonomy for the bad weather months as well.
Right, and now actually, I do have a question with this. When did you have this sort of eureka moment, if you will, when you said, no, we need to customize our solutions based on where they're going, what the needs are in the area, and by the user,
Mm.
versus creating maybe these sort of general solutions, sort of like a one size fit all. When was this moment where you said we have to make this change to make it custom?
I think our customers sort of made that for us. I mean, it's pretty clear globally we're one of the most reliable customers, and it comes down to one of the very fundamental facts about being a lighting company is that people will remember you for when it's not working. Um, they, they don't remember you if 10 years later it's working. They just
Right.
remember when it's not. So I think over the 13 years, which is why we're one of the only companies still existing, is just that being able to make sure that the technology that we put in works. And so a lot of our customers were coming back to us going, hey, I know you do a light, but can we bolt a camera system to it, or can we put environmental sensors or various other bits of security type stuff on them. So and then over the years, we had major Department of Transports globally come to us and say, we've got some dangerous intersections. We can't get power to there. Can you design a system that is more reliable than a mains powered light for those applications? And I think that customer focused innovation has probably been the major reason we've been so successful.
Yes, I mean, I definitely do agree with that. And now I also want to ask precisely about the controller that you mentioned, right? I don't want to delve into the details of it yet,
Yeah.
but I definitely do want to ask how it relates specifically to energy storage. Because now, for solar generation, for solar panels, we know that energy storage is actually quite, I want to say, slightly behind in development versus the actual solar panel development, right? So how did you come to develop this solution, maybe your technology for this energy storage, and then how do you work with it on this controller that you mentioned and the software and the algorithms?
Okay, so I guess from a solar energy storage, we're mainly talking about the battery storage. And the batteries they've got two types. There's one that's designed for, again, the mass market, where what we would call the price per watt has to be as low as it can possibly be so that you can sell your product. So mobile phones have they're more sensitive to price based. When you start getting into high, what we would call mission critical applications, like making sure a light is still working in the morning for security reasons, there has always been high quality, high end cells that are available or you could manufacture. And so GreenFrog, in the industry, we're not the cheapest, and we certainly don't ever want to be. And part of that is the technology we put in the batteries. And so from an energy storage perspective, you get sort of a quite a long life expectancy. So first of all, in a solar light, your biggest point of failure is your battery. And it's also the product where competitors will make the most savings if they put a cheap one in. So first of all, you have the battery. Then there's some pretty advanced tech that we developed about 8 years ago, which is now a little bit more mainstream in what's called cell balancing, where instead of charging the battery in a block, like your car battery, in out, it charges each individual cell. And some of our systems might have 300 or 400 cells in them. And so what you're able to do is every single cell is uniquely different, even if it comes from the same production run of a million cells.
Right.
And so what we were able to do is to charge the unit as a whole, then we stop charging and then we charge each individual one as a cell. And so that's enabled us to have batteries that are still running 10 plus years later at
Wow.
a much higher efficiency rate, or what we'd call degradation, because
Yes.
batteries do drop off every year. So we were able to develop a controller and a very smart battery system that works hand in hand with each other to make sure that we're converting the sun energy to electrical energy through the controller and storing it into the battery, which is then discharged into some pretty advanced lighting technology as well.
Right, and that is actually something that I did not know you did. That's actually pretty cool, especially about this sort of controller. Now, you already mentioned precisely that you came sort of from a software background, right, as well as manufacturing. How did you actually face these challenges while building these algorithms and this controller? It seems very disruptive.
Yeah, it's we blew a lot of minds when we came up with the concept of the algorithms, and but we're able to work in conjunction with some universities and some very smart people to help us sort of write the algorithms, and especially developing the printed circuit boards that go, that are inside the batteries, the battery panks, to be able to do this, and then also the controllers. So yeah, so I guess solar lighting is actually quite complicated, but if you know what the main core things are and you're committed to quality, it is a very, very reliable, stable system for sure.
I definitely agree, especially when you know what you're doing, pretty much, right? Because I mean, it is definitely true that there are scenarios, if you will, or situations where the solar panels might not be reliable. It's great to see that you certainly fixed this. Now, going back to the more sort of general R&D process, right, over the last over 1 decade already, I'm very curious to know, you've already been the CEO and the CTO of this company. It's very, very two separate sort of aspects of a business, right?
Yeah.
So, with your unique perspective, I'm very curious to know what have been some of the most maybe interesting and at the same time difficult challenges that you've had to overcome, maybe in R&D, maybe in manufacturing, maybe in the business side. What have been some of these challenges?
I think for me personally, I've always been good at designing things, and so it's a funny story. One day I thought, one day I want to be a CEO, and I was like, I didn't actually know what that meant until you sit at your garage, your first hire, your second hire, and now so many hires later. And we kind of got to a point about a year ago where the business was scaling so much, and my passion is innovation, and that thought leadership and futurism stuff. And I just found myself not being bogged down in the day to day, and also Green Frog's growth is phenomenal year on year. And so what we needed to do is bring in a team that can work on the business, can grow our massive distribution chains globally, and let me do what the board seems to think is the right thing to do, is actually me to lead that innovation. So I was happy to take on the CTO role, and still drive future innovation, because
of course
we're at the very early cycles of solar and energy storage worldwide, and it's just great to be one of those pioneers.
I definitely agree that you were one of those pioneers. Now, also continuing this thought, this train of you sort of being in these two very different sides of the business, right? I'm very curious to ask one thing. Now, we're sponsored by Control Hub over here, and we talk a lot about procurement and financial planning and everything. But I believe
Mm,
it's very rare for me to sort of have insights to a person that has been on pretty much two very opposite ends, right? Which is
mm,
manufacturing
yeah.
and the R&D part, and also keeping tabs of everything, right?
Mm,
It, sometimes it seems like they're sort of in a constant battle. So how
mm.
did you address that? How did you make sure that you keep everything flowing without everything being entangled and finance not going over engineering, basically?
I think, look, I think one of the core things about being a founder of a company, and some founders get caught up in this, is you've got to know your strengths and your weaknesses, what
Hmm.
you're good at and what you're not good at in business. And I was lucky to have some amazing mentors in the early days that said, Dave, you're good at this, you're not so good at this. And I was able in the early days to bring in a team that we've been able to grow with. Um,
Hmm.
and and I think that's been the major reason is actually knowing when to step away, um, to enable the business to grow, incrementally grow. I think is something that is probably the major reason for our success.
Mm. Right.
Mm,
I mean, it is a very consistent answer we get throughout the whole
mm,
interviews that the team is key. The
mm,
team is key, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that insight. Talking about the team and talking about these success that you've been having thanks to it. Um, I want to talk a little more about the manufacturing facility that you have now on Plano, in Texas, right?
mm, mm,
Now this is around 1 year that you sort of
mm,
started it, right? I believe it's actually just a few days from this anniversary. So
mm.
the first question that I have about this is: over this past year, how has it grown? How has it improved the whole Green Frog Systems operations as a whole?
Mm. Well, America's a is an amazing place. There's so much technology here, world leading innovation, and so it's certainly a natural thing to bring that in house. And um, and I think the journey here in the Plano office is, you know, we've I think when we started here in the US about 7 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
we've moved 4 offices, and now we have a fairly significant facility here, and now we're busting at the seams with that. And I think the commitment to manufacture products to the under the Buy American Act, and having, it's just great to have so many local suppliers
Mm-hmm.
fabricating, most of the parts here, to be able to grow in from North America, and then export to other countries from here, and that's
Right.
pretty much our dream. Hiring, I think we're almost going to be almost hiring a person a week or every couple of weeks from here to the
Wow.
end of the year here in the US. It's an exciting time. So growing the engineering, and I
Uh-huh.
think nowadays with the close with technology, we can interact that with our Australian R&D centre as well,
Mm-hmm.
and do joint development, um, probably in slightly different product lines, and go from there. I mean, one of the funny things was, being an Australian, we don't know what cold is, and I've minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Sort of, I don't even know what that is. So of course, bringing in a team in that's going to be able to develop our you know, low temperature technology
Uh-huh.
makes sense to do it right here in the US. So
Right.
little things like that, where we need to design for specific markets.
Uh-huh.
We're super proud to be able to do that here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is quite a difference, I would say, sort of not just in the operations and manufacturing workflow, but also on the end use as well. Because I agree with you, when you don't really know cold, like real cold,
Yeah,
it's very hard to adapt to it, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
And it offers a very
uh
unique set of problems when you have a a product that's up a pole that's got to last for
hmm
10 years in extreme environments.
right.
And as a business, we knew that really well from high temperature, and it's actually not a big step for us, and we already have some very low temperature options, but
hmm
to be the world's best at this space, we need to do more innovation right here in the US.
Right. And I mean, I definitely do agree also with what you said that the US offers a lot of technology, sort of
Mm,
technology sort of appears everywhere. Everywhere there are options available
mm,
for trying out different technology.
mm.
So again, delving now into the other part of these, you've already had 1 year in the facility. You already mentioned how your workflow has evolved, but how has your technology evolved over these last year, having access to these very unique tech around the
Mm.
US?
Yeah, great question. And I think this America's got some great advancements in battery technology and solar
Mm-hmm.
cell. Um, I think the control America is very strong in control systems, so wireless controls.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our own control system, but certainly the evolution of that using some pretty sophisticated tech here in the US. It's just around the corner here in Plano. So
Mm-hmm.
we're certainly going to be using the US to be this major hub in what I would call the cutting edge technology,
Right.
especially where we're trying to drive efficiencies. We have one of our technology uh, drivers is that we have a less is more philosophy. So
Less is more.
um, yeah, less power, more reliability.
Mm.
That goes from everything from the types of cells we use to the controllers using a lot less power, and then the batteries being able to absorb that energy
Mm-hmm.
without too much losses, and then the LEDs and the lenses that direct the LED, direct the light are
Mm-hmm.
so precise that they put the light where it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
um, to increase the brightness using
Yes.
much lower power than our competitors. And so that's the evolution that we want to drive here from the US.
Right. So I mean, it's sort of like the big brother version of a laser, pretty much. Constant
Pretty much,
focusing this. That's actually pretty cool.
yeah.
That's amazing. I mean,
Well, a lot of people don't realize that um, the evolution of lighting is, you had a giant bulb and a big reflector, and the light reflected up and out, whereas now you have the LED chip reflecting down
uh
completely, and then what you do is you put a lens on it like you would a pair of glasses that are so finely tuned that they put the light distribution where it is, and in some cases you are 200 or 300% more efficient than the old style lighting.
hmm
Um, so obviously using less power, which is great for the environment, but then also um, you can make your light fixtures smaller, or you can make your environment brighter.
Right. That is actually, and I mean that's actually pretty cool. It's sort of like this magnifying glass effect, if you will.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I'm very curious to know how have you, over the last decade, or I mean, how has the Green Frog Systems improved or taken advantage of some of the most, uh, I want to say not just latest, but some of the most disruptive technology changes in lighting systems. For example, a big change was from was when LED sort of came out, right, and started being so manufactured worldwide. How have these changes affected your systems? We already talked about solar. Let's talk about the light now.
Yeah, so I think one of the major challenges
Mm-hmm.
was explaining the concept, because in the old days people would remember you'd rate the bulb in your house by the wattage.
Yeah.
So a 50 watt or 100 watt light bulb, you knew when you went to the shop that 100 watt is going to be brighter than a
Yeah.
50 watt. So and if it was only a little bit more expensive, you'd buy that.
Yeah.
The problem with LED lighting, and then the problem with high-end LEDs
Mhm.
when you couple it to high-end optics, as we like to call it, so the light
Okay.
distribution, when you combine all those factors, I can use a quarter of the power of a competitive light or a mains powered light, and I can still deliver the same light output or meet the standards. So
Mhm.
the big shift has been using, has been convincing customers that, we can provide you with 5 watts of power. And they were like, well, my old system was 50 watts of power. And then when they retrofit them, they're like, why are yours so bright? Well, your 50-watt light is degraded over 10 years and
Right.
it's only offering a quarter of the light output. And, we have much more stable technology. So I
Mhm.
think the disruptive element is certainly showing people that whole less is more philosophy. We can deliver the same outcome, but we can do it with far less watts of
Right. Right.
energy. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It was sort of the same thing when solar power sort of started, like this
Mm,
boom, that people were very reluctant to say no. Hey, it's not gonna give me the efficiency I need because of this misunderstanding, right? Of how the
mm,
wattage works. I definitely agree with you on that.
mm,
Thank you for sharing that. Now, we already discussed about the whole manufacturing and the whole operation side of the business. We already understand better the solar power that you explained to us, and also the lighting. I want to really delve now and ask. I can see them behind you, right?
mm,
The different lighting solutions you have, which I believe are incredible. I mean, you have a bunch, right, of sort of a different tech. I mean, we can see three of them, right,
mm,
two of them, sorry, right back behind you.
mm,
Could you please give us an overview of what these are? How are they different from one another? The use cases.
sure. So to my left,
To your
your
left,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is the shelter light that I was talking about. So this is more designed for, again, bus shelters and various other bits. And it has a solar panel that is easily mounted onto
Hmm.
the top of a shelter for, barbecue areas and things.
Yeah.
We then have a range of lights that are used for pathway and security lighting. So pathways behind your houses where you still want consistent light over your pathways. So
Right.
we're doing projects from 1 or 2 lights right through to 6 or 7 miles of pathways through
Hmm.
a lot of the communities. And we have a couple of different versions of that. We have some very, very contemporary designs, which is the one behind us, which just doesn't even look like it's a solar light.
I agree.
Mm. This particular product has won some European International Lighting Awards, and it was one of the first products to win a very coveted European award. It was
Hmm.
the first renewable-based product in the world to win it, so we were quite proud of that.
Wow. Nice.
Um,
Congrats.
yeah, and then when we have customers that are wanting more lights, so say residential roads or car parking, or um, you know, higher power, or where the client is looking to bolt, say, camera system, or using this for
Hmm.
um, environmental sensors. We then have some new technology we've developed, which is our modular platform. So, which is what's here, and it's available in single units, and then you can option bigger batteries for it,
Ooh.
and all that's configured and made here in the US. And it enables that flexibility for a customer, because this is one of the evolutionary shifts for this technology. Is off-grid power is
Hmm.
becoming more mainstream, and so customers are wanting the ability to future-proof the technology. So some of the new technology enables the customer at any point in time to be modular.
Hmm.
We then have from here we go into the large roadways, so quite popular with the Department of Transports, where we've got some amazing battery technology that's like stackable. You can configure it from 1 to 6 batteries. Um, really cool tech where if you're putting, say, it's very voltage sensitive camera systems, you can hot swap the batteries in and out, still keep the system alive,
Wow.
um, offering, some quite large power formats,
Hmm.
yet still, you know, be on a pole on the side of the road out of harm's way, providing a light, but also providing power for other
Right.
environments. So those are probably the main focuses of the company. So we offer the very small
Hmm.
to the very, very large in power systems.
Right. I mean, that is definitely disruptive. I mean, I don't believe I've ever heard of these of a company that does it so well. Right. I mean, in the end, you're the runner up for it. Um, I also have this question that it sort of crossed my mind, especially when you just explained this to me now, right, about these off-grid systems and how you've been so disruptive, and what
Mm,
you said earlier, that the idea of this is for anybody to be able to sort of install them, no need of a degree, no need of a contractor license, no need of
mm,
any preparation, right? How does
mm,
maintenance look for one of these devices? I mean, you already said they can last easily over 10 years, but how does
mm.
maintenance work to ensure whether it is a healthy, longer life of the device, or maybe just fixing, repairing it, or making sure you give it a second go? How does it look like?
Okay, so good question. I think there's a couple of things there. One is most of in our environments, being 13 years in, we've got technology developed where it's what's called edgeless. We call it our edgeless frame technology. So
Mm.
when you buy your normal solar panel from and you put it on your house, it has a specific metal or aluminum
Hmm.
frame around it,
Yeah.
and those can collect dust points and affects the airflow over the panel, which can attract long-term sort of dust.
Hmm.
That also um, sort of inhibits if there is rain in the cleaning of the panel. So we've got some pretty amazing tech in our edgeless frame designs, where in a lot of cases, even our solar panels that are mounted nearly flat, um, 12, 13 years later, they've never been cleaned,
Mm.
and the lighting technology still works. So that's one element. In areas where there's lots of bird fouling, most of the time, the way we configure the cells was if one of the cells is blocked, it still provides enough power to run the device. So we spend a
Hmm.
lot of time in how we configure the solar cells to be able to do that. And then I think just good, robust design with very high quality cells and batteries means that most of our systems are maintenance free. Um,
Wow.
the most of the technology at any point undo a couple of screws, drop the module out, and you can upgrade it. This this industry is evolving so fast, so it's important that we have upgradability options that
Yeah.
again don't have to be installed by a licensed contractor.
Right. That was actually going to be my follow-up question. You just sort of
Mm.
said it precisely, which is about this upgrade sort of
Yeah.
possibilities, especially with these very long-term solutions that, devices that are going to last you 10, 12 years in the same position.
Mm.
Um, is there sort of a pathway of upgrades in this modularity that you mentioned, right? That maybe you don't have to swap the entire system, but maybe you can swap maybe the battery specifically, or maybe
Yeah.
the solar panel. You already mentioned it's possible without a very specific like a degree, or nobody has to do it like very specifically. Is that something that you have to take into consideration since the very R&D phase of these upgrades, or do you sort of
Yeah.
right?
I, I think having a bunch of really smart engineers, there's no point designing a system and avoiding the white elephant in the room, which is that, a battery is naturally going to degrade over
Yes,
time.
of course.
And depending on the customer's use case, that battery degradation may end up being a light that it's not going to work in the morning in the middle of winter. So
Hmm.
it's important that, you do have to design this in at day one. It's interesting that some of the electric vehicle battery manufacturers are only just starting to get this concept when,
Hmm.
it was pretty clear that, they're going to have to upgrade their batteries at some point. I guess our technology isn't a throwaway item. So it was important to design those that incorporate that ability right from day one.
Right, and that's actually very nice to know. I really really like how these both the less is more, but also the ease of access and ease of installation is such an important aspect of GreenFrag systems. I really like it, especially because of what comes next. Right before we started the interview, we were just chatting very quickly,
Mm.
sort of behind the scenes. Right, you were mentioning precisely about a partnership very recently that you made with a foundation to make sure that very remote areas of the world have access to these very robust lighting solutions, because
Mm.
that's what they are, robust. And I really like how, I mean, they went with you specifically because GreenFrag Systems, your tech, you already mentioned, right? It's hot swappable, it's
Mm.
low maintenance to no maintenance, it's long lasting. So I really like this partnership. Could you please just tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's the whole team here in the US and around the world are really passionate about this one. So we partnered with Light of the Sun. So it's lightofthesun.org, and this foundation specifically set up to address the missing people, specifically across the Native American tribes across the US. And in a lot of cases, these people, women and children, go missing in areas where there is no cell phone coverage and there is
Mm-hmm.
no light. And these people are walking to work, and so, Green Frog, we wanted to make a difference with our technology. And it's clear we have an amazing source of energy. And so we've started this foundation where, a lot of the Native American tribes, if they've got hotspot locations where they're having a lot of trouble,
Mm-hmm.
Green Frog donates the technology.
That's very nice.
Phase one of this is a light, a strobe, and a siren that can be used where someone can go around a bus stop in the middle of nowhere or a particularly bad location. And it's a bit of a call to arms, because what we're looking to do is
Yeah.
evolve the technology, bring in technology partners across the US that can, enable, camera systems and
Yeah.
automatic phone dialers, and, all these technology challenges that are faced where you have no cell phone coverage. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're really proud, and we've done some installations, and we're making a real difference. And our team here across the world, if all it does is save one life, it's worth it. And so we're very passionate about that. So yeah, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about that.
No, and I mean it's my pleasure entirely, because I'm personally a huge fan of these initiatives, right? Where I mean it's sort of like an understood reality that that I mean security is key, right? And not every place can provide it. This safety. So I'm very happy to know that Greenfrag is putting
Mm,
these tech to really good use. How is this
mm.
partnership looking like for the following, say, 2, 3, 5, 10 years in terms of places that you're gonna reach?
Well, we certainly across the Native American tribes, and we're looking to hopefully expand this into general areas where, the community approaches the Light of the Sun website, so lightofthesun.org. They fill out a form, and they nominate a particular area where they've had some issues. The process is getting buy-in from the local municipality, and you know, a lot of them, it might be the Department of Transports. We then engage a local contractor to that area, which is great because then they become upskilled in a new piece of technology. They have a sense of ownership. And I think the evolution of this is being able to provide everything from alert-based systems to, you know, camera feeds so that the authorities can, you know, log in and see and have a look at incidences in locations where it's just not currently possible. So for us, what we're looking to do is provide an energy system that's stable and reliable. And we're hoping, you know, we can attract partners that are willing to also get on board with us to address what is a pretty significant issue here across here in the US.
Yes, I agree. It is pretty significant, and again, I'm very happy, and it's very, very warming in a sense to know that there are companies of such a big name like GreenFrog, to, you know, putting just their tech out there for the better use and for the improvement of the society. So thank you for doing that, and congratulations for, you know, for your reach. Now the interview is coming to an end, and I really want to ask you just two final questions. All right. The number one question that I have for you is a little more in the general, you know, paradigm, or in the general landscape of these very futuristic lighting solutions that you do, right? You combine the best of both worlds, the best of low energy and low wattage lights and LEDs and high end lights, with these very unique, very tailored solar solutions, battery solutions. Where do you think, or where do you see the industry going forward within the next 5-10 years? And more importantly, even, where do you see GreenFrog in it in this future?
Okay, yeah, great question. I think there's some certainties that we all know about. Is the electric vehicle revolution will kick off, and that will spawn a whole bunch of technology in battery storage as well. And there is already some amazing tech we're working on that will, you know, reduce the weight of batteries, yet still give the same energy density. But I think more importantly, one of the fundamental shifts in society will be people come home and plug in their electric cars, and that is going to create a huge power draw on electricity networks. And so people are naturally going to have to and want to have, firstly, have a better understanding of energy storage for their houses. So we'll probably start to see what is called a microgrid, where each individual house or area has its own battery storage as well. But from a GreenFrog perspective, the more the urban sprawl, the more people are traveling and driving and moving out, the less power there is. And so GreenFrog's certainly already been asked to provide stable power for some of the very futuristic sensors that you know, eventually vehicles will talk to, and they will be everything from environmental sensors to pedestrian sensors. So you think about the future, you'll be driving an electric car, and 2 miles down the road, the car knows that there's a concert going on and there's 500 people crossing the road. So the technology will transmit the data to the vehicles, and the more than that, it's going to be difficult to get power to those. So GreenFrog is certainly working to provide an energy source and platforms for the amazing technology and the amazing AI that's coming in this space. And I think in our industry, the traditional lighting is seen as a pole and a light, and that's all it is. It's kind of it's dumb. It doesn't do anything. But what we're looking to do is provide a platform that enables the amazing technology that's coming down the stream to have
Right.
reliable, stable power to do other things. And so I think that's kind of really going to be where the fundamental shift is in the technology. Evolution of the products, naturally, they'll become smaller just due to efficiencies in solar cells and battery storage. And, so I think we're already working on some of the next generation technology in that space.
Nice.
And I think fundamentally making the products more reliable. They are very reliable now, but we're talking about making products that nobody has to even go look at for 20 plus years. And so I
Right.
think that's where the evolution will come from.
It's very nice to know that Dreamfrog is planning already to become part
Mm.
of this. I believe it's sort of like a network type of infrastructure for a more connected sort of country, if you will. It's very nice to know that. Thank you very much
Mm.
for sharing
Mm.
that and for sharing as well everything about your tech. Now, as I
Mm.
mentioned, I had two last questions. That was the first one, and I'm
Yep.
coming with the very last one. And this one I believe is going to be quite interesting, coming from coming from a person that is a founder, has been a CEO, has been a CTO, but
Mm.
also already understands the difference between a startup and founding something and
Sure.
working in a big company like IBM, for example, that you did
Mm.
back in
Mm.
the day. You know, sort of the best of both worlds. And this question is, what advice do you have? What advice do you have for any young person out there who might be
Mm.
starting their own path in engineering? Maybe they're building their own startup. Maybe they're planning on they already started their startup and they're sort of working on maybe their first investment, or they have an idea that they haven't quite figured out how to put in action. What
Mm.
advice do you have for any of these aspiring people?
Oh wow. I think if I was to go back and look at where I started, I think one of the major reasons I'm sitting here now is I just had this I had this vision in my head of where I wanted to be, and I built steps for that. And unless something came to me that fundamentally met my core values of what I wanted to achieve, then either I did it or I didn't do it. And that
Hmm.
might be I need to be the best quality solution. So I will, as an entrepreneur, I'll never jeopardize my quality, even though I'm losing, you know, market share or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the first one is you've got to have thick skin. You got to be persistent. You got to push through. Um, Obviously, another big issue is funding, and I think being very careful of where you get your funding from, because
Mm.
so many people sell great ideas for next to nothing just because um, money was an issue.
Hmm.
Um, and I think just be prepared for hard roads. It's hard work starting a company from nothing, but if you get it right, it's an amazing place to be. So yeah, that's probably my short version of a long answer.
And I can definitely sense that this long answer would be incredibly insightful. But I agree with you; it has been very impactful. And just sort of to close it out, I really like how you really show that the rewards come when based on the effort, and I believe that
Mm.
it would be just even all the sweeter, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
thank you very much
absolutely.
for
But an
sharing.
absolute pleasure to be on your amazing podcast. Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot. I believe that is the perfect way to finish this, right? In such a high note, in such a high quality answer for the advice. Take taps, everybody. And with this, there is only pretty much just a final question to ask you, which is, where can we find you, David? Where can we find you and Green Frog Systems?
Yeah.
Social media handles, website.
Yep. So we obviously have all the Instagrams, the LinkedIn's, the websites. So www.greenfrogsystems.com and greenfrogsystems.com for Instagram as well. So we're pretty much on all the socials, and look forward to talking to many of the people that listen to your podcast.
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I do recommend actually going to your LinkedIn and your website. Like, these two are not just filled with info, but filled with really cool like images and sort of these use cases for the devices. They're really cool. So yes, highly recommended. Highly recommended. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, to everybody else, remember you can find more information, interesting articles, short content, clips, and a lot more interviews on our website, buildernation.io, and also Builder Nation everywhere in social media. We're gonna love to hear from you. Thank you for being part of this community. David, thank you very much for joining us. This was an incredible episode. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And goodbye, everybody.
When building the future is your priority, tedious procurement processes should be last on your list. The problem is that purchasing data is scattered across spreadsheets, receipts, emails, and messages. Tracking it all sucks and makes it easy to commit mistakes. Introducing the Control Hub Way, the all-in-one purchasing software for hardware companies. Buying parts, services, or office supplies? Submit a quick purchase request to buy from your list of approved vendors, or buy from a new provider. Buying from approved vendors is even easier. Import your shopping cart directly into your purchase request using our checkout integrations. When the order is ready, submit it for approval. We'll ping all pre-designated approvers both via Control Hub's website, email, and Slack notifications for a faster turnaround. If you need a PO, we got you. Generate it in one click. Online purchase? Boom, virtual card. Do an automatic 3-way match, pay invoices, and sync everything live with QuickBooks or NetSuite. Purchasing just got a lot easier. Control Hub. Get back to building.